Thank you. Imagine a year where 70... Oops, that's not right. Go forward. There we go. Try that again. Imagine a year where 70% of the population consider individuals more believable than institutions, where 60% of Australians are more likely to believe a search engine than a human editor, where less than 5% of Australians believe the media department of an institution is the most trustworthy source of information. They actually believe the employees are. Globally, the masses no longer trust the institutions of government, NGOs, business or media, but the elites still strongly do. And trust in media reaches an all-time low, finally going below a bottom 1/3 in a trust index. Well, welcome to 2017, and it was this low point for institutions in our world and in our nation that you very kindly invited me to become a fellow of this august institution. And in that regard, I'd like to thank Hugh Bradlow, who's given this attempt to have me inducted as a fellow a couple of shots and put together a white-hot team of Alan Finkel, Michelle Simmons, Lynn Beasley and Snow Barlow to help me get over the line. So thank you very much indeed. What I'm going to do here is just take you through a little bit of my background, but more particularly ask you to consider about the role of media and where the institution of ATSE might lie. So by way of background, I'm actually a banker. I spent almost 20 years at Macquarie Bank. Then I got a phone call from an office here in Sydney from a gentleman called Kerry Packer, and he said to me, "Son, I'd like you to be the CEO." And I said, "Of what?" And he said, "Publishing and Broadcasting Limited." So I suddenly became the CEO of Channel 9, Crown Casino, the magazines, Foxtel, and a number of other assets. And that was in 2000. I was there for a number of years, and Kerry fired me because I bought too many casinos. In fact, my use of mathematics, which I think is the science link, was directed primarily at the application of big data, of large numbers. I worked out that at Crown we had $13 billion of turnover in the high roller, and if I wanted to make it the largest high roller site in the world, I needed to work out how I could take individual bets at $375,000 per hand. That's effectively per second. And to do that, I backdated the whole pool of bets that had been taken for 6 years and worked out that if we got the gaming up to about $32 billion, sorry, $24 billion at the time, we could take individual hands of $375,000 each without changing the marginal risk of the business. And so we destroyed the rest of Australia's high roller gaming, and Crown Casino became the single largest high roller site in the world. So you'd be pleased how I applied my mathematics. The other things that I do, I'm a director of the Myer family investments, so I assist the family run their large financial pot. I'm on the board of AIA, which is the second largest life insurance company in the world, and a couple of weeks ago we bought ComInsure here in Australia, so we'll be the largest life insurance company here in Australia, and I'm on the board of Linfox. I have two core passions in my not-for-profit world. The first one is engagement, and the second one is pursuit of excellence. On the engagement side, and this is where I connect with the science industry, is I'm passionate about changing the cultural paradigm between Australia and science. Because only when we actually change that cultural paradigm do we get what we actually need. The other area that I'm heavily involved in is changing the cultural relationship between business and our society, and I chair the Shared Value Project, which is a project together with Michael Porter in the United States out of Harvard. We're changing the relationship between business and society, and I can talk about that at length. In terms of excellence, I chair the board of the Royal Children's Hospital Foundation. We raise $50 million a year and distribute that all back to the hospital. I chair the Faculty of Business and Economics at Melbourne University, which includes obviously the Commerce faculty and the Melbourne Business School, and I've been on the board of the Australian Chamber Orchestra for the last 12 years. In terms of Humankind Projects, there's two projects that I'm interested in: quantum computing, and I sit on the board of the Centre for Quantum Computing and Quantum Communication at UNSW, and the second one is genomics, and I chair the Centre for Personalised Immunology at the ANU. So let me just then continue on with the thematic of media. So, and how did I become involved in this industry? It was actually, I became involved in 2004. And go back to 2004, and what did the media industry look like then? I just stepped down from PBL. Kerry had fired me for buying Burswood. I met a woman called Baroness Susan Greenfield, and I decided that for 5 years or 4 years of putting up with programming meetings with Kerry and David Leckie, where science was never discussed, that what Baroness Greenfield was to argue for, which was effectively a press gallery, a national press gallery, was a good idea. So at the time, the media industry was delivering content on regulated platforms, well-sourced editorial oversight and specialist journalists, we know that. Science actually wasn't even in the mainstream then because it was expensive to produce, it lacked immediacy, the media gatekeepers struggled to weed out the hype, and it was not advertising friendly. And so that's why we gave rise to the establishment of the Australian Science Media Centre as Australia's Science Press Gallery. At the moment, I'm sure many of you have worked with it. We have 1,500 journalists connected into our site. We have 4,500, that's just in Australia alone. There's a Science Media Centre in the UK. There's one just been launched in the United States, Japan, China, South Africa, Denmark and Germany. We account for about somewhere between 30 and 50% of all of the evidence-based science that you will see in newspapers, television, radio every day here in Australia. You will have never seen our brand. When I put it together and funded it, I asked the media industry just to use all the content. We don't need to be branded, so all the content is available to the media industry. But it's in that backdrop where, even though the pipes were the best possible way of the science industry being able to get their message out, even under those circumstances, the science industry was doing a very poor job. So now then, what happened in 2015, roll forward almost 10 years, and by the way, the distance between 2004 and 2030 is closer than 2004. By 2015, the media industry was completely disrupted. In that sense, the 80% of classified revenue had gone, 80% of advertising revenue had gone. Imagine in your business if 80% of all your revenue was gone. So what that meant is a large loss of journalists generally, but especially specialised journalists in the science reporters, because truth costs money. The money's gone. If there's no money, there's no truth. So you end up with a rise in personality-driven media because it was low cost and easy to monetise. And of course, clickbait, readers as editors and search engines as curators. So social media news is led by what's popular rather than what's credible or important. And in that light, we gave rise to the Australian Science Channel at the Royal Institution. We'd established the Royal Institution a number of years before, but this was the forum, the B2C forum, through which we proposed to help shift the cultural paradigm between our nation and science. So with all that disruption, where is the science industry sitting? We've got a problem. What actually then is going to happen as we move towards 2030? So the old model is basically the elites at the very top controlling the people. The current tension, is it anarchy? Is it populism? Where basically the elites are feeling under the pressure of populism. Or do we move to a new model which is basically the elites and our august science institutions working with the people? That is the new model that we have to move to. And I think that's a form of distributed trust. Now, you may be familiar with the concept of distributed trust. In the old days, I have an Amex card, therefore I'm trustworthy. That's institutional trust. Distributed trust is Uber. Who's used an Uber today? Yeah, okay, so, I mean, why did you get into that car? Some, nice driver you never heard of before. Why did they accept you? Because Uber is just simply a substrate creating a piece of distributed trust because the trust is distributed. There's no actual institution of Amex. Airbnb is a distributed trust model. And so it doesn't mean I'm known by the institution I am, but just show me the number of persons who trust you so I can as well. That's what distributed trust is. Okay, thank you. If in 2004 the science model of communication was power, the old power model, institutional credibility, 2030 success will depend upon science institutions embracing the concept of distributed trust. I'm not sure I know how we're going to do it, but rather than ATSE, I think we might become UTSE, as in, so we need to think that through. Because Australia's role in managing upcoming distributed innovation and technology advances depend upon this. It really depends upon us creating a communication paradigm which is different to anything we've done before, because AI, quantum computing, all these other things, driverless cars, are going to disrupt our society, and our responsibility is to work out the method through which that disruption can be understood rather than frightened with. I believe that we as a community have a familiarity with the form of distributed trust, because the peer review process actually is a form of distributed trust. Unfortunately, it's opaque and not very transparent. It's not really understood by the rest of the community, but we, at the moment, as a community, as an industry, already have a distributed trust model. I don't quite know how we can convert that into UTSE. And I think then the other thing that's helpful is science as an information genre will become demand-driven. To date, it's been supply-driven. I've given speeches before. The science industry is essentially a guild, and the science industry is a series of technically competent workers like to tell the community, you know, I'm good because I've done this work for you, whether you be craftsmen or whatever. So that has to be turned on its head. And the other thing, I think it's important that we think of distributed trust so that ATSE might become a trust coordinator than a trust legislator. It's really important that my fellows, we are allowed to speak freely, openly, on topics where we actually are peer reviewed and published, not on any topic using the status of the institution of ATSE just to rabbit on about something that's on the top of my head. That's not going to work. We should be allowed to talk on topics where we're expert, and we should be encouraged to do that, and I encourage each of you to do that. It's a huge privilege to be invited to become a fellow of this extremely exciting, energising and august body, and I look forward to sharing with you the skills that I can and learning so much from each and all of you. Thank you very much indeed.